Good morning. How is everybody out there? Good to see you, Zach.
You as well, TJ. Hope you're doing
Thomas, making a call. Good to see you, man.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I got a like recurring meeting at like I guess this is 10 a.m. Eastern, so just ditching it. So
That's good for you. You're making the right call. Prioritizing running over work. That's what I'm talking about.
exactly.
That's amazing. Well, cool. Hopefully we'll wait for a couple more folks to pop on and the other coaches. Drew, you made it. How you doing?
I'm good. Very good. I'm nervous about this vaccine. So everyone that's gotten the second dose has said that like 10 to 12 hours later, they just feel like they've been like hit by a truck. So they just maybe fever, but also just like lethargic and achy joints and blah, blah, blah. And so I got my second dose this morning, and then tomorrow morning I'm supposed to be like racing like a hard 8 miles. And so we'll see what happens.
Oh boy.
You should cancel that.
Yeah, that would be my professional advice would be take 2 rest days.
Yeah, if you were my athlete,
I'll cancel it.
Let you do it.
I'll definitely cancel it.
Where are
Yeah.
you racing at?
Yeah,
Where
I
are you
mean,
racing
this
at?
is something like
We both rested for over 48 hours and took 2 extra days off of our training weeks when we got our first dose of the vaccine.
Yeah, so like what are, and this is something maybe we should just do a call on, but what the heck, we'll go ahead and explain it briefly now. But essentially, like any kind of immune response indicates that you're going to have inflammation down to the cellular level. Like there's no escaping that, right? Like no matter how fit you are, what your immune response is, if you get the vaccine, it's provoking cellular level inflammation, which means stress. So, and like there haven't really been any big sweeping studies on this, but this is something like our coach has really impressed upon us, and that like we've written about several times at Trail Runner, is that you just don't want to screw with cellular level inflammation. So like this is what we've done in our own life. Like I hate rest day. Like I love my standing rest day, but like I'm not all about that. I struggle with the bonus rest day thing. And like even I took 2 full days off after getting the first vaccine and felt fine. Like I felt totally fine, no headache, like my arm was sore AF, but that was it. Just because like I'm going into a race before long, and I am not trying to, I just want to give my body every single chance it has to not even just like have a good response to the vaccine, but, cellular level, if you combine training stimulus stress with cellular level stress, you're just upping your chances of experiencing an acute stress injury and or chronic stress that's counterproductive for training. So for us, if you get the first dose, you can do an easy run before, but then you have a rest day after, and then you have an aerobic week after the first dose. After the second dose, it's at minimum 2 mandatory rest days, and then an aerobic week.
To make it easier for myself, I give everybody 2 rest days after both doses. I don't mix and match. I just play one game, rest. I think it's really important. And also it's a really good opportunity to reiterate with yourself, like, it's okay to rest extra. It's not going to affect your training. In fact, it might actually enhance your training.
Well, also that stress is stress, right? Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah. Oh, stress is stress. Yeah. I had a really bad headache and was super tired after my vaccination. And yes, normally I would have run, but because I was being accountable to somebody else, that helped me. I missed a day of filming for a film project that I'm working on. I took that whole day off, even though it was non-running stress, it was skiing stress. And I did not do my long run. I rested for over 48 hours.
Yeah, your cells do not give a single flying F word if you are stressed because of work or training or an injection of mRNA. You have to respect that stress.
Yes.
That's kind of
man. If you're an athlete out there who, after the fact, told me or your coach that you got vaccinated, let it be known. you should be resting. You should tell your coach beforehand
Yeah.
that you're getting the vaccine so we can include
It's
that in your
not
training
punishment.
schedule.
It's not because you're weak. It's because science. Also, like, just take an extra rest day. If I can do it, you can do it.
Oh my God, she did it, guys.
I
I'm not
did it.
even lying about this. Very truthfully, she barely complained about it, which was like a new
rocked it.
breakthrough.
I watched a whole
she
season
crushed
of
it.
Community on the couch.
And we took a walk with the
We
dog.
took a walk.
You did. You watched like 15 episodes.
It was awesome.
Like epic.
It's
Yeah.
that, and everybody knows that girls are tougher than boys. So,
Well,
as
I mean,
I
also
know-
there's some really
Well,
interesting.
more women get the vaccine than men. I don't know.
That's also true. Men tend to be more vaccine hesitant, and women, because of our reproductive systems, tend to mount more robust immune responses. So there is some preliminary studies suggesting that women can have more physical response to the vaccine. Shout out to female reproductive systems, you to bomb, always making life and training that much more fun.
Yeah. I've also had athletes like really take that like extra 48 hours of rest and do super cool stuff with it. Like art projects that they're working on the side, music stuff, Zoe writing a book, super cool.
Pro tip, don't give yourself a book proposal deadline at the same week that you're also finishing a magazine, a podcast, and getting a vaccine.
Yeah, that's been a little hard on us. Whole another subject. Maybe we'll talk about
Multimedia.
boundaries at some
Boundaries.
point.
Saying no, your
saying
best training tool.
Yeah, embrace other things, guys. We've said this before. Running isn't everything. In fact, there is so much more to life than just running, even
Football is
though
life.
football is life. Yep. American football, regular football, if you're a Ted Lasso fan.
Yeah. Ball is life.
And oh gosh, I'm looking forward to that coming out in July. That'll be sweet.
Yeah. We're going to do a Microcosm Ted Lasso watch party somehow.
I'll let you tech wizards figure that one out.
Yeah.
I think Max was like all over it. It was his
Love
idea. Such a good idea. Anyways, we should stop blabbering because we have a lot of questions to
We
go
have some
through today.
baller questions.
It could end up like last week where we just do like 3 of the questions and just have a whole conversation on it, which makes me realize what happened to those other 3 questions. They didn't make it onto today's.
I'll make sure. I'll recoup
Okay.
them.
All right, cool. We'll add those back into the mix for next week. Yeah, guys, if you have any questions about the vaccine, concerns, we're not doctors, but we get our information from doctors. We're happy to have a conversation with you if you're struggling with the fact that you need to rest after the vaccines. But yeah, just know we're doing it too. We know it's tough, but taking extra precautions is just really smart and long-term oriented. And we always want to stress how important that is with training. Great. What should we, I'm not gonna start the nutrition question, Kylie. I'm gonna give us a chance to warm up first instead of putting you on the spot. We have a great nutrition question. What is something easy? What is something easy? I'm fully caffeinated, so maybe I don't need an easy question. Oh, I like this question. This is relatively easy. All right. Is it acceptable, recommended, or discouraged to move training days around? How much notice should I give my coach? What if I start out and I'm not feeling strong that day, or vice versa? What if I feel strong and want to complete a training day early? Should I stick to the plan, or are modifications appropriate? Should I give this to you, Zoe?
Oh my God, please don't do that. You guys, like, that's literally the point of hiring a coach. If you could just do whatever the fuck you wanted whenever, we wouldn't have jobs.
Hey, this is supposed to be kid friendly.
Sorry.
But
We
I
wouldn't
understand
have
the sentiment.
jobs.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we exist. And it's not like, oh, we do this so that we can like feel special and important. Like coaching is a thing because people want and need to be held accountable for doing the right thing at the right time. And when we make a training week, everything is there for a reason. Like, we don't just set arbitrary goals because like it's fun and it makes us feel important and we need to feel validated throughout the course of other people's lives. We do that because there is a rhyme and a reason to where we put things where we do, right? Like, I like you know, this is my like number one pet peeve. If you feel strong, that's awesome. You can feel strong after completing an easy run as easy as possible. If you feel like total crap going into a workout, bag the workout. It's out of your life forever. Don't try to make anything up, right? Like, you know, there's been so many times, like I know on this podcast / Zoom that I've talked about like having struggles with long runs. If I go into a long run meaning to do 20 miles and I only get 12 done, do I go out trying to do the 8 the next day? Hell no. I still do I do the normal prescribed run. It just like, it's out of my life, gone forever.
Yeah, I think that's something that at least I see across the board with my athletes.
No makeup miles.
Is the tendency to be like, well, I'm not sure I can do my entire long run today, so I'll go out there and see what happens. And then, well, if I get to this point and I don't feel great, I'll just try again tomorrow. I really discourage that.
Mentally, it's
Gosh.
not that great for building good mental game. And then physically, so there are times where if you consult with your coach, you can swap like Saturday and Sunday. So typically for my athletes, I have Saturday be the long, and it's different for a lot of people, but Saturday's the long run, Sunday's the recovery one, maybe with strides or hills.
That's the most ideal layout.
That's ideal because we want you to be fresh coming off either an easy day, a rest day, or a cross training day going into the long run. We don't want you to be fatigued going into your long run because that significantly changes the stimulus away from aerobic strength and economic adaptations to being more of a fatigue resistance adaptation, which is a less desirable adaptation. So if you do like 8 miles before you do 20 miles, that's a totally different stimulus than if you do 20 miles before you do 8 miles.
Yeah, completely different.
It just is, it's fundamentally different. That doesn't mean it's not good or there isn't a time and a place for it. It's just different. Same thing if you like, there are some times where like, particularly if I have like a podcast coming out, I'll work with my coach, or like something stressful, a big deadline. I'll work with my coach to move my workout around. So I'm doing it on a day where I know I'm going to get a full night's sleep and I'm not going to be crazy or anxious or anything. Forgive my incorrect use of the word crazy, but like there are times when you can move things around, and the further out you can let your coach know, the better. Otherwise, the most desirable way to confront these things is to just skip it. Like, just like, honestly,
just do what you can.
Let it pass from your life like so much morning mist, and do not try to make it up, you know, like don't think about it ever again. Do not beat yourself up over it. Let your coach know as far out as possible. Things are where they are for a specific reason. And if you have questions about that, work with us. But, you know, something that I really try to impress upon my athletes is that training isn't filling a mileage bucket. You're not just like, oh, I'm going to try to get as much mileage into this week as possible. It's building a wall, and there's differently kind of shaped stone, like it's Tetrising, and like things need to be where they are for a reason. And if they're in a, you know, if you have like that weird, you know, when you get the upside down L-shaped thing coming into your week and you're like, oh God, like that's not going to fly. Let us know so that we can rearrange things.
Yeah, totally. And rearranging things in a strategic way that takes into account some of those life stresses is you know, what our job is all about. But I also think that it's important for athletes to kind of work through sometimes what they're feeling. So if you're not feeling great, don't just quit on a run. Something big that, you know, we've talked about in previous calls is like, don't trust the first couple miles. After you've been training for, you know, a couple years, you've been putting a lot of miles on your legs, even with rest, sometimes it just takes a little while to warm up, especially later in a training block. Just don't trust those first couple miles. Just go really easy and make the goal feeling fresh at the end. Make the goal to finish feeling better than when you started. Don't just give up and go home and be like, I'll try this workout again tomorrow. I've totally seen that, especially on workout days where an athlete will go out, do a few intervals, they're not feeling it, they call it a day, they don't tell me, then the next day they just do the whole workout again. And that's, you know, that isn't appropriate. That's not great.
And what that means is there's probably some kind of underlying stress that means the workout didn't go as planned on Wednesday. Unlikely that underlying stress was 100% resolved by Thursday when you tried to do the workout again. So like, even if you did get it in and it did feel okay, you're actually doing it in a way where you still have that unresolved stress, and then you're adding in more stress, and that's likely less productive for your training. And it would have been more beneficial just to do an easy run.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think I've actually been in my own training kind of coming up against this a little bit. And a couple weeks ago when my grandmother passed away, I had to be somewhere and I had a workout on that same day. And I went out and forced my workout and it felt terrible. I should have just skipped it. Like you have those days where you're like, I'll give it a shot and see, I can get through this workout. I've gone out feeling like worse than this and had a fine workout. But then you really start to feel like you're not flowing. Or you're forcing it. You don't have the pep in your legs or whatever. You're not there mentally. Looking back, I wish I had just taken, that as an easy running day or a rest and had like sent my coach a text message and been like, yo, I'm not feeling this. Should we do X, Y, or Z instead? And I've been working with my coach for like almost 4 years. So at this point, I feel pretty comfortable making some changes like that on the fly based on how I'm feeling. So we don't want you to force workouts, but the point wouldn't have been for me to do that workout at another time. It would have just been to walk away from that workout. And then just yesterday, I had a lot of my workouts have been on Thursdays lately because of vaccines and the whole way that my schedule's been laying out. I had the first few intervals that I did were tough. But I just gave it a chance to evolve. Like my goal was to finish with my best intervals at the end, not to bring my best stuff at the beginning and then, fade away.
Yeah.
And then I felt, amazing at the end. And I was like, I really wish this workout was like longer because I was feeling so good. So there's a lot of opportunity in this stuff to one, reinforce good decision-making, two, reinforce good communication with your coach, and utilize that support. And I think three, there's a lot of opportunity in just kind of being open-minded to how you feel out there and not judging the first few intervals, not judging the first few miles, and with the caveats that like, if you're out there and you're hurt, if you don't feel good, if you're sick, if you're, you need a mental health day, I know it can be tough to step away from the workout. And I think we, as I illustrated that I wish I had done that a few weeks ago. But sometimes you just need to make the tough choice, which is the higher choice in those moments, and to step away. Drew, I want to throw it to you because I feel like you've got an opinion on this.
Yeah. So obviously we all understand that sometimes we wake up and we feel sick or stressed or tired and that kind of stuff happens. And so kind of like Zoe mentioned already, small changes in your schedule are expected at times. But we have to get away from the idea that every week is just, we can shuffle everything whenever we want to, anytime we feel good or bad. It's just a really, I guess, bad habit to get into as it pertains to your long-term goals and your long-term strategies. I liked the question that was posed because it also mentioned like, what if I feel really good on a day? Can I like move like a speed workout or whatever up because I feel good today? And that's one that I would also highly discourage. When I'm training my athletes for some of their shorter distances, and we have very specific workouts that have to be done on specific days, at specific places, at specific distances and times, and like everything is very planned for a reason. Just like moving it around all willy-nilly really does long-term detriment to your training plan. And so that's really all I have to add. But that communication and talking to your coach and letting them know, like if you feel bad, let them know. If you feel good, also let your coach know. And then we can kind of play with things a little bit, but again, not going to change every week, every time you feel good or bad.
Yeah, totally. Try to stick to your schedule.
Yeah. And think about it in the context of racing. If you show up 3 days early to the start line because you feel good, no one's going to care. You'll just be standing in a parking lot feeling good by yourself. On the same vein, if you show up to the start line and you go up to the race director and you're like, I'm not having a great day. What if we did this tomorrow or Thursday? They're going to be like, you'll again, just be here on your own. Let Ultra Sign Up know,
Yeah. Cool. Well, I feel like we definitely explained that one very well.
We have strong feelings.
Yeah.
I have strong feelings.
Let's go to our nutrition expert, Kylie, for our next question. Kylie, you ready for this one?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. All right. This is
As she
just,
did.
yeah, this is just such a good question. I feel like a lot of athletes struggle with this, especially athletes who are like making like dietary transitions, like going from eating a lot of like meat-based diets to plant-based and things like that. And this is just a really great question for everybody. So how can I be sure my daily caloric intake is appropriate? How much should this vary for training days, easy days, and rest days?
Okay, so my first point of advice is to not just start restricting food. If you're looking to lose weight, essentially. I typically, when I'm starting to work with an athlete, I will have them gain a little bit of awareness of where they're at. So not that I advocate for use of something like MyFitnessPal chronometer all the time, but it can give you an idea. Using one of those tools can give you an idea of, if you're at 50% of your calorie intake for the day, then that might be a problem, even if, those systems are a bit inaccurate. So that inaccuracy, and then like your watch inaccuracies, et cetera, that it would account for that essentially. Like you're still going to be in some kind of deficit. So gaining a little bit of awareness, I think, as a learning tool with one of those things is a good place to start. And then in regards to how how many calories you need per day, that in itself, I usually tell people is very complicated. So there is a calculation that you can use online, but it's still an estimate. So really the only way that you can get your resting metabolic rate is if you go to probably a university or maybe some kind of metabolic clinic where they would have a metabolic cart that you would have to be hooked up to, and it would give you your exact metabolic reading. That reading can change based on, if you're restricting calories too long, your metabolic rate can change. Hormonally, that can affect your metabolic rate, thyroid issues. So it might not stay the same. If you've had it done before, essentially, it might not stay the same for the rest of your life. Then I'm trying to figure out the best way to, I guess, approach this in kind of like a step-by-step way. So if you wanted to know the exact caloric, like resting metabolic rate, that's where you would get it at. You can get an estimate, something like
how important is it to get it like totally?
But again, it's still an estimate. And then the other thing you have to consider is like your watches and your devices. Those are just estimations in regards to like how much you're burning during activity. So taking those for face value is not necessarily something that you want to rely on all the time for your exact caloric burn. If you're looking for weight loss, I highly suggest, and I'm not just saying this to like promote myself, but highly suggest if you're training and trying to lose weight, that you work with a professional that does have experience with athletes, because I get a lot of people that are putting themselves into extreme calorie deficits, which we do know that if you're in pretty much more than a 600 calorie deficit a day, that you're going to start not only breaking down fat and losing fat, but also muscle mass. And losing muscle mass isn't really what a lot of people need to be doing. It's going to put you at risk for injury and illness. So there kind of needs to be that good balance there, and kind of having someone guide you throughout that process, I think is really important. I don't advocate that people honestly try to do this again on their own. I know a lot of coaches are even against weight loss in general. I do work with people that want to try to lose a little bit of weight in a healthy manner. So again, just encouraging you to be smart about it if that's what you're trying to do. And then the other thing to keep in mind is you really don't want to be trying to lose weight if you have a big event or a race coming up. I usually say like 4 to 6 weeks out from your event, you really should not be trying to lose weight at all. So there are specific times that are better for body comp and weight loss changes, which would be more in the off season. So keeping in mind that if you have a big like summer racing schedule coming up, not the best time to be trying to lose weight. If we're looking at it more from a non-calorie weight loss perspective, which is the approach I do take with probably over 50% of the people I work with, normally looking at your training days as categorizing them in 3 different categories. Not necessarily by intensity, but by total time, just to make things easy. So I usually say like 0 to 60 minutes. You can consider that like an easy day. 61 minutes to 2 hours, a moderate day, and then 2+ hours as a hard day. And again, this is like obviously just more of a simple framework, but on all of those days, you need to be getting in 3 regular meals. And then you can alter the number of snacks on those different days. So I usually say like 1 to 2 snacks on an easy day, 2 to 3 on a moderate, and 3 on a hard day. So snack wise, and then with my framework, I usually give like all different types of snacks, etc. We're not going to go into that, but I'm just trying to give you guys like, you need to be regularly eating and increasing the amount you're eating for the training day. And then also in regards to that, increasing carbohydrates as you increase amount of activity. So that's a very like simplistic way of looking at it, but that is typically like how I'm altering meal composition with people, is a slight increase in protein as training increases, a slight increase in carbohydrate, and then fats will typically increase as well a little bit. So if you want to think about it that way in a more of a simplistic manner, that's a good way to approach it. If you are hungry all the time, if you're feeling like low energy, not recovering, a lot of those things are symptoms or indicators that you're probably not getting in enough. So kind of on the other end of things, just like being aware and listening to your body, that it's telling you something about, potentially your nutrition intake. So that's kind of, I don't know if that was like such a piecemeal way of answering that, but I know there's like kind of
Complicated, right?
to do that in regards to like, am I getting in enough / what if I want to lose weight? Like there's just a lot there. So
Yeah, Kylie, I think that was really great. Particularly what stood out to me was kind of your description about upping the carbohydrate intake and also the protein intake on training days in response to what the overall like duration of activity is. I think that is a really, obviously that's a more simplified way of looking at it. And to go in greater depth, you would schedule a consultation with somebody like Kylie. We really recommend, guys, if you have big dietary questions, to work with a registered dietitian who is experienced in working with runners or other endurance athletes, because the needs of an endurance athlete are significantly different than the needs of just a regular working person. So the numbers aren't going to be the same when you get down to the specifics, and each individual, really all of this is very, very individualized. So that was, just to be fair, that was very broad strokes, but I think Kylie did a great job in explaining it. A couple things that I really want to mention is, one, again, we don't want to, our focus here should not be to lose weight. Our focus should be to always be eating enough to support the training that we're doing.
Training for running is not a weight loss plan, and weight loss is an unlikely outcome from running training.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, actually, we see a lot of athletes who, if they're eating appropriately, will gain a little bit of weight in the training process as their body adapts to the specific demands of the sport that they're doing. The other thing that I really want to mention is your eating habits shouldn't change on your rest day. You should not be eating less on your rest day necessarily. And I think, Kylie, you probably agree. If not, you could be more specific on that.
Yeah, I think a big mistake that I see is people will they focus on not eating for they really focus on trying to eat for the like next day of things. And I usually encourage like, look, like really try to eat for that day, like long run day. Like the reason why people get super hungry like days after that or have bad workouts is because they're not focusing on eating for their long run day, then the next day. Like it's just like you need to actually be present and focus on that in the moment versus trying to make up for it later. I guess that in regards to the rest day, I still provide that framework of like you need to be getting in 3 meals and at least a snack on a rest day. You shouldn't be cutting like significantly restricting carbohydrates on that day either, because again, it's kind of like I was just saying, like oftentimes the rest days are after a big like weekend of training or something, and it is like I want people to eat for that day, but oftentimes you're still coming up short. So if you then restrict on your rest day, then you're going to get yourself into a bigger hole. So there are strategies that you can use to try and kind of keep that in check and make sure that you're meeting your needs. And again, that comes more with like awareness, working with someone, and trying to make sure you just paying more intentionality, I guess, with the nutrition and the eating.
Yeah, I really think that a lot of athletes become very good intuitive eaters. Like they're able to kind of intuit and understand that those body feedback signals that you mentioned earlier, like I'm feeling hungry during this run, or I'm not feeling satiated when I'm, after dinner, when I'm going to bed. Those can be signs. Like one, if you're feeling hungry during your run, it's a sign that you probably went on that run and your glycogen stores weren't fully filled. And so it can be a good indication that you need to go home and eat some more carbohydrates. Going to bed, not feeling satiated is a good indicator that you haven't been eating enough protein across those 3 meals and, a few snacks that you eat during the day. It's very important to spread that protein intake out.
Conversely, we have a lot of athletes that have to eat mechanically as well because they might not feel hungry. However, like they know that they need to be hitting certain targets for things to stay healthy and grow in training. And that's also valid.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up because that is, especially if you're doing higher volume training, your hunger and fullness cues can really get altered. And so I'm all for intuitive eating, but you need to pay attention to being intentional with things as well. And that's why oftentimes I will give that baseline of like 3 meals and a certain number of snacks, because a lot of athletes that I work with will be like, well, I'm just not hungry, so I didn't eat. And so like they'll get in this pattern of just like not eating. And so that can have like a cascading effect. Some people have the opposite problem and they're hungry all the time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. I think that if anyone here is not eating 3 meals a day and a snack, that's a strong indication that you need to get back to the foundation of just good, balanced, healthy eating habits and routine building around eating. As an athlete, that's the bare minimum that we would kind of expect.
Yeah. No matter like what your job is, like keep snacks in your pocket, like make sure you're getting those targets in, right? Like, I don't care if you're busy, I'm busy. I still have to eat a crap ton to like stay alive.
Yeah, I think something at least that has helped is like protein shakes and kind of like big like protein meal replacement. I know that's helped.
But
Zoe
but you don't replace a meal with like. I want to be clear that we're not
that's like a snack
instead of a beat.
To add
right,
more
right,
calories to the diet.
Exactly. Like I want to be clear about how we're using those things. We're not replacing meals. We're like getting occasionally 5 meals a day in.
Yeah, I would say at least.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I'm eating 5 or 6 meals a day.
Yeah, I was feeling hungry after my run yesterday, so I followed it up with a protein smoothie, and then we had nachos, and then we had pizza. That's just like a sample meal plan from the latter half of the day.
Lunch, and I think you had 2 or 3 breakfasts.
I usually have 2 breakfasts.
Yeah. And
They don't make bowls that are the correct size for me.
That's so true. Yeah, or you just go back for more because you feel
Yeah.
like you're hungry still, and I think that that's really awesome when you're training super hard. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning with this question is, this question asks, how do I know what the appropriate caloric intake is? When I hear caloric intake, I think about numbers very specifically, and I really want to steer you guys away from counting calories and trying to hit very specific like numbers. Again, if you need to get down to the specifics, if you're having issues with your eating habits, work with a registered dietitian so you know what numbers are
Yeah.
appropriate and you have supervision in that process.
If this is something that takes up like any amount of your brain space, work with a professional on it, right? Like if you have any doubts, be safe, work with a professional.
Yeah.
Just everyone here is training at like an elite level. You're training many multiple days of weeks for years, for months, like work with Kylie and or another professional that fits your goals.
Cool.
Don't mess around with caloric. Like it's your body.
Yeah. All right. Should we move on to another question?
Probably.
Cool. Thank you, Kylie, for your expertise. I thought
Yeah.
that was really well done.
It's obviously a complex question, and I appreciate you providing more of a framework than like a black and white answer.
Here's a good question. I think this is a really great one about training. Okay. What's the difference between running 5 days a week versus 6? This may have something to do with progression. More volume is easier to split over 6 days rather than 5. I'm curious, what does the research say? Is there anything I should know about this?
I love this question. So just to be real basic and zoom way out, I have most athletes run 5 days a week. I have advanced athletes that have been training for like a year plus, honestly, can, if it's productive and if their goals demand it, move to 6 days a week. I trained for 2 years before I moved to 6 days a week of running.
Yeah.
You need to have a specific reason to do it, by the way. Like, don't just do it to do it. Like, it needs to be because you're desirous of specific adaptations. You can actually get.
What would those adaptations be? What would be the advantage of running that 6 day?
So for me, my coach had me do it. We moved to 6 days so I could get my volume up slightly. And then at certain points, I'll even cut back down to 5 days and like concentrate. Like when you concentrate the stress, you get certain better adaptations, right? Like it's just, it's different. But like sometimes if you want to move people up to a higher volume more safely, you can transition them to a 6 day a week. And then once that's safe, you can maintain that volume, but only do 5 days a week. And then you get more rest, which is really great for particularly people who are newer to running and want to build speed and economy.
I think also, adding in the 6 day of the week, not only, what would be the reason for wanting to raise somebody's volume? Having another hour on your feet is great for the aerobic system. It's also very good for economy and for other biomechanical adaptations, increasing neuromuscular adaptations.
In less trained athletes, you might want to have a full rest day from running so that like, even if you're doing the same volume, having more rest means you're going into more runs better rested and are therefore more likely to get those running economy adaptations.
Right.
It's complicated. It's a very complicated question to answer, but it also depends on like what you're training for and what your injury history is, right? Like if I have an athlete that's injury prone, we're very unlikely to move to a 6 day a week running schedule.
Right. It wouldn't make sense because it's better to go into your runs a little bit more well rested. However, if you're an athlete that's leveling up, we need to increase your volume. You've got more experience, a safe way to distribute that volume to help you get some more aerobic stimulus, also to increase economy and things like that I mentioned before. You can add in that 6 day of running. It really helps. And there are some significant differences to running like a 60-mile week over 6 days and running 60-mile week over 5 days. Mm-hmm. That stress distribution, it actually is probably easier to accomplish running 60 miles a week on 6 days than it is on 5 days. So it really depends on where you're at in your own progress as an athlete, in your own training. For some athletes who have been training for a long time, that 6 day of running is really, really necessary. to continue to help that athlete to progress.
Because you need that additional stress. Like at a certain point, only running 5 days a week for well-trained athletes will no longer be, so even, you know, given workouts, context of life, all these things, so many caveats with like every broad strokes recommendation. But at certain points, you have to add in that additional novel stress so that you can provoke novel adaptations.
Yeah, totally. Or, you know, in this case, I think sometimes when we're adding in that 6 day a week, we're just adding in that additional stress to help level up, to build on adaptations that we've already made before.
Yeah. And I think, you know, this really illustrates the point that not all miles are created equal, and each mile has a specific purpose, right? We're never just trying to run 70 miles or 20 miles for the sake of, oh, 20 miles is it, like your body doesn't care, like your body isn't like metric or standard, like it has no clue, right? It's all about different heuristics for allocating stress and stimulus. And at some points it's quite arbitrary.
Yeah.
So again, just really, I caution people away from conceptualizing running as hitting mileage goals pretty much ever. It's a stimulus load, it's a stress load.
Yeah.
You know,
Drew, I'm curious if there's any differing opinion in like the very specific marathon running world about running that extra day a week.
Yeah, not necessarily. Kind of like what you guys discussed, volume can be key. And so for more advanced athletes, obviously the volume needs to be there. I want to make sure that for athletes only running 5 days a week, I say only, like running 5 days a week.
Yeah, that's huge to run 5 days a week is a
Yeah, that
major
doesn't
accomplishment.
necessarily mean that you're not like a high level athlete or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you can view it as like the quality over quantity way of looking at things, where when you're well rested or have more rest throughout the week, you're more likely to have like, I guess, more breakthroughs or more, I guess, just beneficial, physiological beneficial results from adding in that extra rest day. Sometimes rest days, like when we talk about like running 5 days for 6 days, sometimes having like what I like to call an active recovery day, where some people might call it cross training, but just like getting out and doing something that is helpful for like your mental health and being outdoors and whatnot is also key, and may not count towards like your overall mileage. And it doesn't necessarily count towards like you didn't run that 6th day or whatever, but being out and getting out there is also really, really important. But that's about it. Typically, I mean, you guys covered most of it. Very similar for marathoning to ultra marathoning.
And
Yeah,
again,
awesome.
don't use mileage or number of days running per week to validate like yourself as an athlete. I have been an amazing athlete running 5 days a week, and I've been just an okay athlete running 6 days a week. And I've been a great athlete at 6 days a week and a just okay. Like it's always more about the quality than the quantity. And, you know, don't put certain like mileages days a week run on a pedestal as like, oh, when I'm finally running this many miles, then I'm a runner, then I'm an athlete. Like, no, you're on this call, you're listening to a recorded YouTube video about running. Like you're in the club, we have jackets.
Yeah, totally. Oh man, microcosm jackets.
Oh.
All right, let's well, for the sake of time, and I feel like Kylie's answer to this would probably be somewhat similar to ours, so maybe we'll move on to another question and let you take this one from the top, Kylie. But I would love, and I think some people really like some of the more personal answers. And this is one that we haven't done for a while. Kylie, why do you run?
One sec. Sorry. Why do I? I think that can change as you're evolving as a runner, like where you're at in your life. Because when I was younger, I feel like I ran because it was something that I could do well, and I liked competing. and not that I don't like that today, but I actually use running more for a like peaceful space and to like maybe challenge myself a little bit more, because I used to do road running and now I'm like trying to do trails. But it's not as much about that competition side of things as it used to be. So I think that's important to kind of recognize that like as you run more, you're why might change, and that's okay. And I think that that is actually kind of a good sign of like growth.
Yeah, awesome. I love your answer to like, I'm running to find a peaceful space. I love that. Yeah, and your why can be totally movable. Why not? Drew, what do you think?
When I started running, it was pretty early in life, like a preteen pretty much, where I started having a lot of issues with self-esteem. And so like being able to go out and run made me feel confident in myself, confident in my body. And I've always been like a little string bean. Like I'm not like the biggest, strongest, fastest person, but in having running as an outlet and not, I don't want to say I'm good at it, but it's a talent that I've got. And so I've like been able to develop confidence in myself and confidence in my ability, that's carried me on to do things that I don't know that I would have done otherwise, like managing a series of running stores and working as a coach and helping other people find stuff like that. So that's why I guess I started running. But like Kylie said, that changes and evolves to where now I'm a father of a 2-year-old girl with another little baby on the way in August. And now I want to be like a good role model. I want my kids to see me running and taking care of my body so that they know that that's important. So they do that too when they get older.
Yeah, awesome.
God.
Love that answer. Zoe?
Oh man, I feel like, echoing Kylie's sentiment that it totally changed. Like, honestly, when I first started running was right when I was becoming friends with Drew because he was my boss. And so just like the way I got into running was like, I had to I needed accountability. And I was like, well, you're not going to let Drew down because you want to impress him as a friend and boss. So like, I would meet Drew at like 6 a.m. every morning. We would run together and it like became this amazing friendship. And like, that was totally my reason for running, was like to hang out with Drew. And then I met like all these other friends and we had this incredible morning running group. And it was just like this thing that for years anchored my life, was like this, these amazing social connections where we would just like, there'd be some runs we would like do 6 miles, no one would speak, it would be amazing, or we would like not shut up the whole time. And it was just this like way of connecting with others for me. And I think that was an amazing way to get into the sport and has like totally colored a lot of my why now. Like, I mean, one of the reasons I really wanted to work at Trail Runners because I value bringing together people and connecting over our shared love of a sport. Even though like trail running like is like, I think I would be doing a similar job if I was like passionate about biking or like whales or like whatever. Like I would be doing a very similar kind of like just forging connections, trying to bring people together and like make a community and like writing about experiences. And I still think a lot of my why for running is connection, even if it's not necessarily running with other people. Particularly, I'm not a super social runner anymore. I do miss those days a whole so much. Not just like having, I had this amazing group in Arkansas, but during the pandemic, even running with TJ was kind of a treat. But it's still so much about like, it brings me closer to other people and it helps me get outside of my own head and experiences, and it just makes me a more empathetic person towards others. And I really struggle with self-compassion, and running is like an amazing way to work through that every single day. Like I have to work through issues around self-compassion on rest days. I work through issues around self-compassion on workout days, on easy days, on long runs. And it's just this amazing framework for me to really try to have a more understanding space about myself and get to know myself and accept myself unconditionally, which is kind of a project of a lifetime. And running is a really fun way to try to explore that. But again, like, I could probably achieve something similar through bird watching or gardening or whatever. Like the mode is pretty arbitrary. Running's great because you can fit in a lot of self-exploration on a lunch break, which is convenient. But I think for me, it's about really trying to get to know myself and be kinder to that person.
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow. I love this question because, and just getting to have a little window seat here to listen to Kylie and Drew and you talk about your whys, because I feel like like, at least for me, like my why is like everything that you guys, all of you guys said, and even other things too. Like I really identify with Kylie's like perspective on like using running as like a peaceful space. You know, and like that's just like can be such a personal space. And like Drew's answer on really using running to like build confidence. And I like your part of your answer where you're using running to develop like self-compassion. And I think that you guys just hit on like three big things that I think if they resonate with me, I guarantee they resonate with everybody who's listening to this podcast, because we all run for like such a variety of different reasons that are very you know, deeply personal, right? That like have this connection to things that are going on in our lives in the given moment, or are the deeper parts of our value systems and things like that. Gosh, it's just, yeah, that's so cool. And I think, I don't know, maybe to add on to that, you know, for me, I really got into running as a way to get fitter for my, you know, for my personal pursuits as a professional skier and ski mountaineer. And that was at this point, I mean, that was, you know, 8 or 10 years ago. I mean, it was such a long time ago that I really took like what was a hobby and made it and tried to make it into something that was like very specific in use. You know, I need to get fit for these adventures so I can build this resume, so I can get paid, so I can get a roof over my head. Like, you know, very financially based, very based in like building fitness, and then seeing that evolve into like, wow, like it's so amazing where you can go like on a training run and being able to use that platform for so much more, right? Like to the point where like you get into I got into trail racing and you know, started coaching. And it's interesting, at least in the moment right now, to reflect on how long that journey, you know, that's been a 10-year journey at least, if not longer. And the why just, it changes. It really does change. You know, now my why now, like, you know, some of the reason why I really go out and train every day is again, I really like Drew's like role model mention of being a role model. I think kind of being the, you know, an example of this is what you can accomplish if you're willing to put in a little bit of work every day for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, you can go from being you know, fit to winning races if that's what your desire is. You can become a more confident mountain adventurer and mountain athlete, you know, if you're willing to chip away at this stuff for a long time. And I love just like getting better a little bit every day. I like really engaging in process oriented activities, whether it's like my own coaching or whether it's the running thing. Like running is so acutely process oriented. Like if you go and run an hour a day for 5 years, you're going to become a really freaking awesome runner. You're going to become a great runner. Like you're going to become a master of that sport. You take it even a step further, like you really start to understand your craft, and then you can guide people in that process too, which is even more uplifting. And I think then, you know, personal accomplishments, it's seeing other people accomplish things that they've been dreaming about. That is like the bedrock of why I still get out and run on rainy days, on snowy days, on windy days, you know, on days when I'm tired and having, you know, life stress and things like that. That's why I like continue to stay focused. Yeah. Anyways, I feel like that encompasses part of my why, at least.
I think it's so interesting that a lot of people's why they got into running is like so different than why they kept running, right?
Yeah.
Like I got into it to hang out with Drew, and now here we are, like years and years later, still hanging out, but like through a very different kind of modality. And like, you know, what gets me out the door every day isn't like a need to impress people anymore. Like I no longer feel like I have to prove myself. I'm just like, oh yeah, can't wait to like throw on an audiobook and just like shuffle around town.
Yeah.
And like that makes me so happy.
It's so cool when you
It's
get to
such a
that.
dumb thing that makes me just so happy.
But it's so awesome when you get to that point where like you really enjoy just like your like normal town route.
Yeah, I
for
think
like
it, like
whatever reason.
I came back from a run like last Friday and I was like, TJ, I'm gonna get really into jogging because I had like finally nailed a run where there was like no intensity. The only like purpose behind it was to like, was to just get out there. And I like fully jogged and I was like, this is the freaking best sport of all time. You just get to go at whatever, like just so easy, listen to like NPR. Man, jogging is great.
Yeah.
Like no, like I had zero like pressure. I'm like, oh, I'm doing this to get ready for a race or like whatever. I was just like, this is awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. It was just so nice to listen to all of those answers and those perspectives. Well, we could probably wrap up with maybe.
I think
trying to find
Drew
a
and
quick
Kylie
one
both
here.
dropped off. So
Bye,
that might be a
Drew.
good place to
All right. Well,
shut her down.
Yeah, we'll call it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening in. Again, we kind of talked about some nutrition stuff today. We talked about moving around your runs. We discourage that. Try to stick to your schedule. And when you know you're going to get off your schedule, let your coach know ahead of time. Also, we talked quite a bit about the vaccines. If you're going to get vaccinated soon, let your coach know. And congratulations, getting the vaccine is a big deal.
Get it. It's worth it. Don't stress. Like I had a lot of anxiety because I knew it would impact my training. That's something that gives me anxiety. And then I did it and it was fine and I lived. So you can too.
Yes. We had a big conversation about that when you cancel your first vaccination appointment.
Well, so that conflicted with both work and training and
I know
everything.
But I think vaccines are a priority and I would encourage you guys to prioritize them above your training. Anyways, we also talked about running 5 days a week versus 6 days. And we kind of dove into some like personal stuff around each of the coaches' whys. And hopefully we'll get Kristen in here because she's got a really amazing why. And I believe we talked about that on a previous call. So if you go through the archives, you might be able to uncover that. Yeah, Monday community check-in. Hope to just hear from all of you guys. No topic necessarily, but maybe something will come to mind between now and Monday. Hope to see you guys here. Thanks. Woo! Hope you guys have a good weekend. Bye.